All right, everybody, welcome back. Good afternoon. We're doing more deep diving on Krivoshein Haynes, the new Seattle Seahawks right guard. And now we're going to be looking at the traits. What does he do well? What does he do really well? What does he do not so well? Really isn't so much stuff that he does really poorly or anything like that, so I'm not going to say that. But basically, what makes him appealing? What makes him not as appealing as some of the players that went ahead of him? You guys know the drill. So we're going to do pros and cons, and a lot of this was covered in my pre-draft coverage of these players. I did a video on Krivoshein Haynes before the draft, but it's worth reiterating, and there's going to be some new stuff as well, because again, you get more of an opportunity to really explore the space once you know the player is on your team. So, Krivoshein Haynes, what is he bringing to the table in terms of the positive? The thing that really stands out, and the most important thing is, he is a very good athlete, and based on his abilities physically, fits in very well in a zone scheme. He, especially for a right guard, those movement skills, the quickness, the agility, the lateral movement skills, all that stuff, the explosiveness, you usually don't see that in a right guard. And you usually don't see it in a left guard, honestly, too. Like, a lot of left guards are not as athletic as this guy is. So the fact that he's doing this as a right guard is really good and really appealing. And that's probably the main thing that stands out about him. He's bringing something to the table that Damian Lewis couldn't. And honestly, while Anthony Bradford was a very athletic player for his size, he's also bringing some refinement that Bradford just didn't have last year. He had loads of starting experience in college. He started 51 games, including his last 49 in a row. He only missed the remainder of the 2018 season after starting the first two games. And then he got redshirted, and then he came back, and he didn't miss another start for UConn. Never got hurt outside of that first season. So he is definitely working from a big reservoir of experience. His lateral quickness and his smarts show up really well when he picks up exotic pressure packages, like when a team throws a twist at him, throws a stunt at him. When these defensive fronts try to really trick him, try to put him in a situation where he's not just blocking the guy standing right in front of him, but pre-snap, or in a stance right in front of him pre-snap, he looks good. He's able to recognize what is going on in front of him most of the time and pick it up. So he's definitely a smart football player. He also has strength, and this is kind of the thing that made me like this guy so much. He doesn't sacrifice that much strength to be such a good athlete. There are guards out there that have the agility, have the movement skills, have the ability to play in space, but they're not very strong. They're just kind of weak. And those guards can find success in the right situation. You put them in the right offense, they will figure it out and find ways to be effective players for them because they have the skills that they're looking for. But Krivoshein Haynes is a guy who has those things, but he's also got the ability to just push a dude out of the way, get a dude out of the hole, bull rush, well, not bull rush, but push a guy back with a drive block. He has a nice anchor. He doesn't give up that much in that area. When he's making contact with opposing defensive players, he understands angles, understands how exactly to position himself relative to the defender to maximize his effectiveness as a blocker. It's just one of those things where an understanding of physics and an understanding of things like increases in how should I put this? Increases in like leverage coming from a certain side of the player is going to make your block more effective than it would have been otherwise. And he's not just athletic. That's the other thing too, because Anthony Bradford was athletic, but he didn't have a ton of experience playing in space, and he wasn't as effective at it as Krivoshein Haynes is. He hits targets on the move with regularity when you look at the tape from UConn. He's very experienced hitting reach blocks. He climbs up to the second level. He goes out to block in front of a screen. I saw that a couple times. So this is not like, oh, he can do it. He just needs to learn how to do it. He already knows how to do it. You just need to unleash him. He has plenty of reps as a gap blocker as well. So it's not like he's completely lost in that area. So if Grubb wants to run a very flexible offense where maybe half the run plays are zone and half of them are gap, then I think Grubb is going to be able to do that with a offensive lineman like Haynes, because Haynes has done both. Now, most players do both, and Haynes did definitely do more zone, but there's a decent amount of gap experience there as well. He's a powerful finisher. There's a strong desire to keep going until the whistle blows, and he wants to have his man on the ground and completely out of the play by the end. So there's no give up after he wins the rep initially. There's no, oh, I got this one. I'm going to go ahead and ease up here at the end. No, he's got the desire to dominate the rep all the way through and make sure that his man is completely neutralized. He's very quick out of his stance. I didn't see any snaps where a guy would just completely blow past him. Like when you're watching all that Byron Murphy tape, you see a lot of plays where Byron Murphy just gets past the offensive line before the offensive lineman's even up. You don't see that with Christian Haynes. He's always getting up quickly, and what the defender throws at him, he's ready for. He's generally ready to react to whatever it is that he's getting from the defense on that play, be it a twist or a stunt, be it an inside move, an outside move, a counter, whatever it is, he's ready to rock. And it's relatively rare that you see him get completely befuddled by what he's looking at and not react to it quickly enough. He understands how to use his hands to take control of reps as well. He has a nice first strike, knows how to use it. I like his punch to take away momentum from the opposing player. He can anchor and then re-anchor as well. So he's got some of that stuff down as well. And while I would caution against this, he does have the athletic profile to play left guard, and he could also probably play center if you feel like his arms are too short, which I don't. I think 33.5 inches is fine, but if it ever became an issue, you could try him at left guard or center, and it might work. I caution against that personally, but it's got to be at least on the table. It's more on the table with him than it is with a lot of guys. He was also a team captain at UConn. I don't know how many times he was a team captain, but he was at least once. So he was definitely bringing leadership qualities, which is going to be considered a positive here. And overall, there's every reason to believe that he will be ready to start day one. This isn't an Anthony Bradford situation. We drafted Bradford thinking he wasn't going to be able to play at all year one. As it turns out, he did because people got hurt. And it went, well, you guys saw what happened last year. It was okay. It was like, it was forgettable. It was whatever. Haynes should be ready to go day one and play at a high level. I'm not looking at him and thinking, oh, he needs a lot of work. He needs a little bit of work. So, lot to really like here with Haynes. Pretty ready to go out of the box. I do have some issues that I want to talk about a little bit here. Some of the things that maybe he could either get better at or are just going to be weaknesses for him. He is a little bit small for a right guard. Like Anthony Bradford has, I think, 15 pounds on him. So most right guards are going to be bigger than Haynes. So there are going to be some things that right guards can do most of the time that he will not be able to do most of the time, simply because he is smaller. Now, again, that's kind of the trade-off you make most of the time. You can't get somebody who has everything unless you want to spend a premium pick on them, and you didn't spend a premium pick here. Now, it was a top 100 pick. I'm not saying it was like a really low pick, but it wasn't like a first-round pick. And if there's ever a guard prospect that comes around that gives you everything, like he's got size, he's got speed, he's got athleticism, he's got quickness, he's got experience. Like if he brings all those things to the table, he's going to be a much higher pick. I think we all get that. And at the end of the day, it is your responsibility as an offensive coordinator to not ask him to do those things very often, but it would be fair to say he's a little bit smaller than the average right guard. One thing that comes up in his tape in terms of maybe a bad habit that he needs to get worked out of his game is he leans into contact, where like you're just leaning forward into the line, into the defender that you're trying to block instead of staying upright and balanced. And it causes you to be susceptible to some moves. It causes you to be susceptible to getting beat. in a situation where you didn't need to get beat. So that's something that needs to get worked on. He leaves his hands wide in pass protection sometimes, which exposes his chest, which you don't want to do. You do not want to let a pass rusher get into your chest. That's how they take control of the rep. So that's another thing that's going to have to get cleaned up probably, but I think it's pretty easy to take care of. Both those things should be very coachable, and this is a smart player. This is a very intelligent player in terms of football stuff. No reason to believe he won't be able to pick this stuff up. He did draw a lot of penalties in college, and I think some of it is he gets a little bit grabby. And in the NFL, they're not going to let him get away with it even as much as he did in college. I do think that he gets grabby at times, and he doesn't need to be grabby, but I think part of it might be because he doesn't have extremely long arms, and there are going to be some guys out there that can really test his edges because of that. But I don't expect it to be a big problem in the long run because he does have decent arm length for a guard, and especially a right guard. And it's just going to be a thing where he just needs to learn to not be so grabby. Again, I think it's very fixable. Although I don't want to go too crazy with what can be fixed here. He is a 24-year-old player at this point. He's only ever played snaps at right guard. So as much as I did say earlier that he has the traits to potentially play left or center, I would definitely caution against that. He's never played left guard or center before. Even Anthony Bradford played tackle a little bit in college, so he's been moved around a little bit. I'd like to leave this guy at right guard. I feel like some of his weaknesses will be mitigated if you leave him at right guard, and he's just free to be the best player that he can be at right. While I do think a lot of the issues with him are fixable, it is worth noting that he's already 24 and he might have limited room to improve further. So I don't want to act like that he's just suddenly going to be able to become some hyper elite player and all of his issues are going to get fixed because the coaching gets their hands on him. Like he is an older rookie. All right, so that was my full scouting evaluation on Haynes after getting a chance to deeper dive on him. There's a lot more positives than negatives here for sure. Most of the negatives with him are honestly things that just come with the territory. Like, yeah, he's a little bit smaller. That's part of the reason why he's so athletic, why he's so good in space. If he weighed 15 pounds more, he wouldn't be nearly as good when he's pull blocking or pulling up to the second level or third level even. So that's just the trade-off that you make here, and I assume this team is more than prepared to deal with that. And a lot of this other stuff should be relatively coachable, especially if you leave him at right guard. Like his outsides, his edges getting tested is going to happen more at left guard, where he has to deal with three techs, more athletic guys. Leave him on the right side dealing with more nose tackle types. You will probably find that that doesn't come up nearly as often. So, really good prospect, really good player. This is exactly how I want to address a position like the right guard. Don't go overboard with it. Wait for a prospect who fits what you're trying to do, which Haynes does, and just take him where it's appropriate to take him. To me, this is so much better than doing something like Osiris Torrance last year, who didn't fit what we were doing at all. This guy fits, and you got him with a lower pick than it would have taken to get Torrance. So that is how I feel about the player as a player. Next video, we're going to go over some notes from some of the game tape that I watched with this guy. And a little bit hard to find Yukon tape, but I found some.